Yes, hello everyone. It's great to see you all. This is something that I find quite interesting, this particular behaviour, and very relevant right now. Took a day's holiday yesterday and spent it shopping, so I know it's an unusual thing. It's a strange thing that humans do, so I want to try and understand it and talk to you a bit about it from a psychological perspective. So I'm going to talk a bit about why we might engage with gift giving and some of the reasons we give for giving gifts. So if you just think about the whole process that's involved in it, firstly, there's that mad clamber around shops, around our high streets and shopping centres, which is lessened now that there's more online things, but trust me, it's still very busy even on Wednesday morning. And we're battling through different rooms as we're going from cold into a nice warm environment, and everyone's getting hot and flustered and everything's all over the place. We're doing this, buying things for other people. And it's costing us a lot of money. A lot of people go into debt over Christmas and actually spend more money than they really should do on presents, for other people. And what might be the net result of this is you get things that you don't particularly want. And you give gifts to people that you think, well, this will do, but it's something that they might like or not. As I think probably most men my age, I have a lot of cufflinks. I counted this morning, I got 5 pairs of cufflinks. Not because I don't wear cufflinks. I do not wear them, but they're a good gift to get a man as he approaches years old. And so over the years, I've accumulated cufflinks. I don't need them, but people have very kindly given me cufflinks as gifts. But it's a waste. I'd much rather they kept that money for themselves, or go to a better cause than that. So this is all about giving gifts. So the answer is, well, why do we do it? Why are we engaging in this ritual? Not just at Christmas, we do it at other times of the year for different reasons. It's a really common thing, and it's common to all humans. So if that's the case, then we can understand it from a psychological perspective. And to do that, I'm going to take you back 2 million years, if I can, briefly in 20 minutes, thinking about where humans came from as a species. We evolved in environments that looked a little bit like this on the left-hand side of the screen. It's what we call a grassland savanna. Would look like this, probably a bit more trees. And we all evolved in this part of the world, the Great Rift Valley in East Africa, where is now modern sort of Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia. And humans as a species probably lived there from about 6 to 8 million years ago till probably about 100 to 80,000 years ago, when we started coming up out of Africa, out into Eastern Europe, and into Asia, and eventually getting to Worcester quite recently. And this is the environment we lived in. It looked a little bit like this, probably not quite as idyllic as this. We lived in groups what called hunter-gatherer existence. So there was a difference that we actually hunt for different foods. This is before we had agriculture and able to actually look after different livestock. It's all right, go sit. And we lived in groups of about 100 to 200 different individuals. And we lived in a very idyllic way. And because of that, what we know now is that, well, that's what it was like for such a long period of time. What's it like now? Well, we still should have exactly the same psychology that made us successful over those millions of years. It should sort of evolved, helped us solve problems that we had living like this. But it should be with us in the present day, even though it's a completely different environment. I mean, we have to come into rooms that are all centrally heated. We have to sit under here, under lit, because it's really dark at this time of year. We're getting up in the morning when it's dark. We shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be getting up. Well, some of you may not have got up this time of year when it's dark. It's hard to avoid now. We live very strange lives now. We still have exactly the same brains that evolved for millions of years. But in a very, very short blink of an eye period of time, we've now changed in a completely new environment. And we're in an environment now where we have all these rituals at different times of years where we're expected to give gifts. Combine that with the different things about commercialization, able to buy different products. We've got a strange mix. We've still got this psychology about living socially, but we live in an environment where it's a bit strange. And that's the key thing about us as a species. We are a very social species. No matter where you go in the planet, you find that humans are incredibly social, which is quite an unusual thing. It'd be very difficult to get this amount of of different individuals of another primate species, and all in one room without you all fighting each other. I mean, I know it's early. Once the coffee and the mince pie sugar kicks in, you might start fighting. But as it is, we can sit here quite nicely and get along with each other. People smiling, people happy about it. We're very social. And the reason is because it's very difficult to be a human. We need other people. We need that support of other people. If we cooperate with each other, we get along in groups like we are now, we're much more successful than if we work on our own. And that's the key thing. It's much better as humans to get on with other people, help other people, be helped by those people, than go on our own. So that, I think, relates a lot to what we're doing about giving gifts. And we understand why we help other people. What's the benefit for us? This is something that Darwin struggled with. Charles Darwin came up with his theory of natural selection to explain evolution. He didn't understand why humans would help each other, or any species help each other. His idea was that we do things for the good of ourselves. That's where terms like survival of the fittest came from. The idea you do things to help yourself survive against anybody else. You make sure you're all right. Everyone else will, have to fend for themselves. But he found this wasn't the case. And he wrote about that in one of his later books, The Descent of Man. And he said this bit, he said, "He who was ready to sacrifice his life, as many a savage has been, rather than betray his comrades, would often leave no offspring to inherit his noble nature. The bravest men, who were always willing to come to the front in war and who freely risked their lives for others, would on average perish in larger numbers than other men." So what he was talking about here was the fact that any individual who risks their own life to save the lives of others, and in this case he's talking about in a war setting, that's great. It's very noble, very brave, very heroic, very altruistic thing to do. But that person dies. And if you die, you're very unlikely to leave any offspring to the future because you're dead. Those who are cowering at the back, hiding at the back, not getting involved, not helping others, looking after themselves, maybe not so noble, but guess what? They didn't die. And if they didn't die, they're more likely to have offspring who inherited their less noble nature. But the reason is we are very noble, we are very helpful, we are very kind to each other. So we need to explain that, and that's something that Darwin didn't realise. Well, he did realise, he just didn't know how to explain it. Since then, we've come up with some ideas about who we help and why, from an evolutionary perspective, how that can help our own well-being. One idea is something called kin selection. Good way of thinking about it is blood is thicker than water. We care for people we're related to. We care for family members, more so than we do other people, in general. I mean, some family members you've seen it, but anyway. But in general, we care more for our family than we do non-family. And there's a very good reason for this. People we're related to share the same genes as we do. So, in order to make sure that your genes go into the next generation and beyond, which is what happens in natural selection, it's good to make sure that you survive and pass on those genes to your offspring. But a good thing to do is to make sure that individuals who share those genes also have offspring. So we're talking about your siblings, your brothers, your sisters, parents caring for offspring, aunts caring for nephews and nieces, and so on. We find that everywhere in the animal kingdom. Kin selection, you find it in prides of lions, you find it in ants, you find it in any species you look at. They predominantly care for people they're related to. And the reason is because they share genes with them. And it's the same in humans. Fast forward, and what we're talking about, gift giving. Well, think about who we predominantly buy gifts for and who we get gifts from. People you may not see that often. Your great Aunt Janet in Australia still sends you £10, and well, hopefully a cheque now, probably transfers the money, but she still does, still maintain it. So you find these sorts of links, you find these sorts of things, and you find that those people you're more closely related to give you bigger presents. So you're more likely to get bigger presents from parents and brothers and sisters than you are from cousins or second cousins or uncles and aunts. Test it out. Do a survey this Christmas. Look at the size and cost of presents and correlate it with how related you are. If anybody close relatives really letting you down, you let them know, saying, well, according to kin selection, you should have bought me a lot bigger present. And there's, I can send you some references to back that up. It's always good to cite your evidence. So that's one group of people we buy presents for, and that makes sense. What about people we're not related to? Why should we help those? They don't share any genes with us. Well, this is where we look at things like reciprocation. The idea of something called reciprocal altruism. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And this is one of the key things when I said at the start that helping other people is better than working on your own. If you help someone and they return that favour in the future, you're much better off than if you try and do things alone. So I've got an example here from a Tough Mudder where people have to climb up a big ramp. Ooh. If you help other people will help you. Then you're much better off than trying to climb up one of those things on your own. So we have these reciprocal relationships. You find them in all human societies, all human cultures. You find them in other species as well, that pairs of people help each other. And they always benefit from it. And what happens in these relationships is they tend to be ongoing, they tend to be long-lasting. If you know that you can trust someone and you help them, that they'll return that favour in the future, then that's a good relationship to maintain. Keep it going. It's, it's what we call friendship, really. You sort of break it down. We like the people as well and that sort of thing. But it's a reciprocal arrangement. And that helps us. Much better to have a big social support, big network, than you are working from your own. And Christmas is a great time to work on that. Sending cards, these sort of personalised cards. I mean, I send cards to friends from university. I don't see them anymore, or very rarely see them, but we still exchange cards every year. It's still maintained there. Still write a nice message. Still always have to try and remember what the name of his second child is. Always good to name your children in alphabetical order. Makes my life a lot easier. And giving gifts helps maintain it as well. Exchanging gifts is such an important thing. Helps maintain these relationships, helps us live in groups very successfully. But it's not just the case that you help those you're related to and those who return the favour. We also can do it for more cynical reasons. Well, I say cynical, but not really. We can give gifts to improve our reputation. Here's a picture I found of people giving gifts, I think, to a charity, like a homeless shelter, putting the gifts there. They're not doing it subtly. They want to make sure that everybody sees it. This was actually a company who did that, and they put it on their website saying, look how supportive we are of people in the homeless, that they're giving all these gifts and food to charity. Now, why couldn't they have just done this without putting a picture on their website? Well, they could have done, but then, where did they get the benefit there? Much better to show what a nice company you are, what wonderful people you are, and post the pictures on it. So we find a lot of cases where people give gifts, it is a signal. Actually people are signalling their reputation. And again, it might make it sound a bit cynical, but I think, well, that's okay. You're still giving to charity. Even if you take the example of Scrooge, and the classic version of Scrooge, which is the Muppets Christmas Carol, and that's the way Charles Dickens wanted it. If you think in the end, when Scrooge eventually sees the errors of his ways, realises he needs to be more magnanimous and kinder to people, and he arranges this massive meal, invites all of his workers' family to it. Again, it was showing off reputation, make sure everyone can see what a great feast I've arranged for people, and make sure that it was there. So that's part of it as well. Another thing which I'm particularly interested in is gift giving as a courtship display. Now, those of you with boyfriends and girlfriends might realise the minefield that is about buying gifts at this time of year. It's all right when you've been married for a few years, it's no problem. Just whatever she said in the list, get that, no problems whatsoever. But maybe in the early stages, it is an important thing, important part of it. And this is something that I've done quite a bit of research on. And we find that actually men are much more likely to display their altruistic nature to women. And women appreciate that. Women view this as a desirable trait, particularly for long-term relationships, to signal that you're a kind person. If you're a nice person, you'll be someone who'll support you. That's great if you do enter a long-term relationship and eventually maybe have offspring. You want to make sure that man signals that he'll be a good father as well. And I've shown that through quite a bit of research, where this study I did a few years ago, where I found that men were much more likely to be cooperative towards women in order to give them gifts. And also that it's rated more by women for long-term relationships. They find men who are altruistic, who are more charitable, more generous, more desirable. And men do as well. Men find this an attractive trait. And also, this study I did a few years ago with some project students here at Worcester showed that actually when it came to trade-off between being physically attractive or generous, women preferred the generous men for long-term relationships. Okay, so you can see then the value of men investing their money, spending that time, going around the high street, finding exactly the right perfume or exactly right whatever it is, because it's an attractive trait. Okay, this study was picked up by quite a few newspapers, so The Independent wrote about it, and actually Most of them got it right. He even got in the Daily Star, which I was quite pleased about, which not always renowned for their coverage of scientific research, but they actually got the idea right. Because it's interesting. It shows that actually being kind, being generous is much more important than just being physically attractive. Now, you might wonder from all of this that, well, I'm looking at a very sort of innate level, this biological, evolutionary basis to understand something like gift giving. Why do we need to? Surely the answer is we give gifts, we go through all the effort of trawling through the shops, spending all our money, getting things we don't necessarily need or want, because it makes us feel good. We get a nice feeling from it. We get warm and it changes how we feel about things. And that's something that Blair will be talking about when she talks about being thankful, being grateful for gifts. That's actually why we do it. We feel good from doing it. That feeling when you spent a long time picking a present for someone, seeing them unwrap it, you get a warm glow, nice feeling from it. Doesn't that explain it better than all these ideas about relating to lions and reputation? That's more cynical, that's more cold way of doing it. Yeah, that's true. And the correct answer is, yeah, that is also correct, that we do it because it makes us feel good. But as a psychologist, what I'm interested in, well, why does it make you feel good? Why do you get this warm feeling from doing it? The reason is, I think, it's because it's so important for us as humans to get on with each other, to be social, to live in groups. Actually, having that drive to help people, be nice to people, buy them gifts, is what causes it. That's what drives it. And you have that emotional response to it, which is why we drag ourselves around the shops you get the impression I don't like buying gifts, don't you? You're right. It's just a pain. But I go through it every year because I'd rather do that than not do that. Okay? It's far more important to do that. And because of that, partly because of the warm glow I get from doing it.